It is now 9:30 and this inquiry is resumed. Before the formalities, can I just check if you can all hear me? And that the live stream is commenced. Thank you. For anyone new to these proceedings, my name is Kevin Gleeson. I'm the Planning Inspector, appointed by the Secretary of State for Transport to hold this inquiry and make a recommendation to her. The Programme Officer is Helen Wilson. She is seated at the rear of the room. If you have any questions about the inquiry process, organisation or documentation, please speak to her. So this is the third day of the inquiry. First, the usual reminders. Mobile phones and other electronic devices switch to silent, please. No fire alarm tests or drills in the event. So in the event of a fire alarm, please exit by the fire exits to my right, further along on that side of the room and where you came in. Fire evacuation assembly point is located in the car park. Toilets are located in the entrance area that came through as well. As with day one of the inquiry, we'll aim to finish by 5 p.m. with a break of around an hour for lunch at 1 p.m. and a short mid-morning and mid-afternoon break. So today we will complete the cross-examination of Mr. Keane, representing the applicant, that will be by Dr. Langley. We'll then have the examination in chief and cross-examination, firstly of Mr. Clark and then of Mr. Winchell on behalf of the consortium. So before we begin that, does anyone wish to speak today who hasn't already indicated they wish to do so? Are there any procedural or housekeeping matters anyone wishes to raise? Yes, Dr.
Could you tell me what the situation is with respect to the revised draft statutory instrument, please?
Yes, Mr. Reynolds, you mentioned yesterday that that would be available tomorrow morning?
That's correct.
So it will be available to all of us tomorrow.
And when will we have the opportunity to comment on it?
Formally, so just thinking about the programme. So you are due to give your evidence on Tuesday in any case,
right.
so it can be raised then. But if there's anything you wish to put in writing either at that time or beforehand, please let me know.
Yeah, okay, I'm able to do that, thank you.
Does that sound reasonable, Mr. Reynolds?
This is an object.
Yeah. Mr. Dibble?
No objection.
Thank you. And that goes for anyone else who wants to comment on that documentation. Okay, thank you. There was one other issue which I just wanted to raise, and that was the plan which was left on my desk at the start of the examination. It's a large plan which has the location of the toll road, a ferry road, and it is marked in red. I'm presuming that is what's...
I'm told it's the official land registry plan of the area.
So there's no indication what the red does actually represent. Is it possible that can be confirmed?
Yes, it's a...
It's the ferry road is on registered land, and that has been put on the red has been put on the land registry to indicate the ferry road.
Why don't I take full instructions in relation to that? I'll let you know now.
That'd be
Sure,
helpful.
sure.
Yes, and then I suppose related to that, I've got a hard copy.
Yes.
Is it possible to have an electronic copy that can be entered into of some sort? Or...
We have loads of physical copies, but there isn't. We couldn't identify a photocopier that would do something that big.
Can't be reduced.
We were going to put it up on the wall, and we have to do that if people would like to look at it.
That might be helpful so that everyone has access to it, because it would be an inquiry document, so a copy could be made available.
We'll put that up shortly, Chairman.
Thank you. So, any other procedural or housekeeping matters? No? In that case, let's continue with the programme and give Dr. Langley cross-examining Mr. Keane. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Keane.
Good morning.
I'd like to turn first back to discounts and ask you, is the evidence for your discounts being excessive and unsustainable restricted to the table in the explanatory memorandum, paragraph 10.2, which is under 1, page 19?
That's the evidence submitted, and I think that's fairly conclusive on its own.
And can you confirm that that calculation is the total car revenue in a year, a financial year, divided by the number of cars actually crossing in a financial year, i.e. the ferry office number of cars crossing?
That's correct.
Why isn't it the total revenue from the cars divided by the number of tickets actually sold?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, why isn't it the total revenue divided by the number of tickets sold?
I'll just confirm that that's what it was.
No, the number of tickets sold is not the same as the number of cars carried.
Let me explain the calculation you're referring to. It's the total number of cars carried in any given year divided by the total revenue in that year for that same class, Class F cars.
Or the other way up, yes. So it's the income divided by the number of cars actually physically using the ferry,
Correct.
which is not the same as the number of tickets bought in a year.
For the number of tickets bought in a year, it depends if you're talking about tickets or cash sales as well. Quite simply, the figure is arrived at by taking the total revenue, so that's cash sales and advance purchase tickets sold in any given year, divided by the number of cars actually carried in the same given year.
So, I'll just ask the question again, why is it not the revenue divided by the number of crossings that have been purchased?
Because it isn't, that's not how we've chosen to demonstrate it.
Okay, so with your calculation, if in a year, let's say all of the cars crossed using tickets that they bought in previous tax years, in previous financial years, how would your calculation work then?
We would be unable to assimilate that number because we don't know how many cars carried in any one particular year purchased their ticket that year, or in the previous financial year, or in the financial year preceding that.
Yeah, I think your calculation is very misleading because it's only correct if the backlog of tickets, if you like, at the beginning of the year is the same as the backlog of tickets at the end of the year. And the calculation, which is income divided by number of tickets actually bought, is much more accurate reflection of the purchase decision of people at the time the tickets are being bought and the actual average price paid per crossing per car. The way you calculate it can produce entirely spurious results.
Sorry, what was your question?
Sorry, but that wasn't a question. So I believe your calculation can lead to misleading numbers. Do you agree with that?
Not at all.
Okay, then let's refer to the table in B4, page 179.
We might have the bundle reference.
Yeah, B4, 179. Actually, while you're looking at that, I'll give you just one more example where your calculation gives the wrong answers. If you had 50 cars passing in a year, crossing in a year, all using tickets that they bought in previous years, and you had one car that purchased one ticket in that year, you'd have an income of 1, but you'd have a crossing number of 6. So you would appear on your calculation to have a very low average price per car. And that would be wrong because you haven't taken account that the discounted tickets that are being used from previous years actually have a value attached to them.
Sorry, your question is?
Sorry, it wasn't. I was just giving you an illustration of why your calculation is incorrect. But anyway, if we turn to this table, turn to these two tables, turn to this table here. In these tables, I've taken the actual income and volume applied from the toll. So these are numbers based on income divided by revenue in the year. Sorry, tickets bought in income divided by number of crossings bought in the year rather than number of cars crossing in the year. And the first table shows financial year 2024 data, and that analysis shows that the average price per car was £4.82, or a discount of 38p relative to the single ticket fare. So that's for 2024. An average discount of 7.3%. And I point out that that is higher than the number in your table, and the reason for that is the one I've just given. Turning to the next table, if we look at the 2020 inquiry forecast data for 2024, and do the same calculation, we find that the forecast APC was £4.79 with an average discount of 41p or 7.9%. So actually the expectation in the 2020 inquiry was that the discount would be about the same, actually slightly higher than it currently is. And do you agree that that conflicts with your conclusion?
It does conflict with our conclusion, but that's because we've approached using a slightly different methodology, and I believe that the way we've looked at it is more accurate and paints a truer picture of the actual situation. Because it's very clear, it's the revenue in any year divided by the number of vehicles carried in that same class in any year. So what it's demonstrating is that prior to any financial year, people may have amassed tickets at a lower price. So it's looking at quite simply the revenue from a class in a year divided by the traffic of that same class in a year. So I still believe that that is the clearest way of demonstrating the fact that book ticket sales have increased dramatically. So the company is left in the situation where for carrying X number of cars, it's it's collecting a smaller amount of revenue.
So you don't agree with the example that I gave you of how the calculation can lead to an incorrect answer?
I don't necessarily disagree with it. I don't wholly understand it, but as I said, you appear to be approaching the same principle but from a different angle, which gives a slightly different result. But again, I repeat that I still consider that our methodology of looking at this particular aspect is more accurate, more transparent, and more giving the inspector the correct view on the situation.
Well, let's turn then to the future rather than the past, perhaps. When customers come to buy tickets, it's their current behaviour that is important, because that determines what the future, determines what the instant revenue of the company is. So surely it's the decision they make at the point of purchase that's important, i.e. do they decide to buy a single ticket or do they decide to buy a book ticket or a discount? So surely the price, the average price that is being paid in a particular financial year is what matters. Do you agree with that?
Not necessarily, because I don't wholly understand your line of questioning, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry for not explaining it well enough. If passenger behaviour was changing had changed because of discounts, what you would see is that at the point of purchase of a ticket, a decision would be made by passengers to either buy a discounted ticket or a single ticket. That behaviour is demonstrated by what they do at the point of purchase, not at the point of use. And the tables I present here show that at the point of purchase, the ratios of discounted tickets to non-discounted tickets are precisely, or more or less exactly, what was predicted in the 2020 inquiry. Do you agree with that?
No, I'm afraid I don't.
Okay, let's pass on. You stated in your proof of evidence paragraph 8.2, which is B3, page 71. So B3, page 71, paragraph 8.2. You said that the change in discounts dramatically changed passenger purchase patterns, with far fewer passengers paying full fare tickets. But in your modelling, in the forecasting of the future, there's been no adjustment, no change made to that ratio in response to your proposed changes in discounts. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do agree with that, and potentially we should have factored that matter in. The fact that more people are buying book tickets than car tickets, and no doubt the inspector will appreciate that if we had factored that in, revenue would actually be less than what we're predicting it will be. We were hoping initially, when the projections were first simulated, that the balance between advanced purchases and cash sales would rebound to where it was before the 2021 inquiry. and perhaps that was a mistake to have done that. But as I say, our methodology will only show a greater amount of revenue than what is likely to be if behavioural patterns remain the same as they are.
No, what I meant actually, sorry, I should have been clearer perhaps, was that your revised discounts are lower than the current discounts, and therefore, if you had modeled that effect in your forecast, it should have increased your forecast incomes.
Are you talking about modelling in the pattern or the cost of the tickets?
The pattern of purchase.
No, I disagree. If we'd have modelled in the fact that we are selling fewer book tickets, and we were selling fewer book tickets in 2024, so in effect, with Mr Thomas's latest iteration, where he's taken the average between 2018 and 2024, that will naturally assume that there has been a 50% reversal of the behavioural change since the 2021 order. In my opinion, that would be hopeful, but it's a pragmatic and prudent way to approach it, and if anything, the revenue generated or the projected revenue generated is more than likely to be higher than it probably is. Or probably will be.
Sorry, I think we're talking at cross purposes here. As the discounts in your forecast, the latest forecast, vary throughout the period ahead, do you agree with that?
Yes, in the first 4 years they vary, and then they become constant.
And the discounts are decreasing. Is that correct?
I am unaware of the particular page within the bundles.
It would be helpful if we were to stick into that page. I'll find the reference.
The discount rates initially increase.
Forgive me, it's bundle 3, page 75.
So on bundle 3, page 75, that clearly shows what the discount rates with an assumed rate of CPI will actually be.
Yeah, but the discounts are transitioning from where they are now to something which is lower in the end. Is that correct?
That's correct, and
yes.
That's been stated several times. The rates are coming down from 32 and 28 to 28 and 24% respectively.
So, because of that, you would expect that fewer people would be buying bulk discounts.
I think with that small reduction in the discount, the effect will be marginal.
So it's not a dramatic change in passenger behaviour. Is that correct?
When we had the huge, unsustainable increase in discounts as awarded under the last 2021 order, there was a behavioural pattern, a swing towards purchase of book tickets, advance purchases. That was a change from 10 and 15 to 28 and 32%. So that was more than double, 2.5 times to 2 times the previous amount of discount available. The reduction in discount now proposed is much, much smaller, and I would suspect and expect the behavioural change to be mirrored by that smaller change in the rate of discount, notwithstanding that the underlying toll has increased.
But yes, I mean, you've stated again about these unsustainable discounts, but I would just takes back to the calculation which I've done, which shows that the behaviour does not seem to have been changed from what was expected in the 2020 inquiry. So, the point I'm making, I suppose, is that if the actual discount rate makes such a difference to sales, then it is something that should have been modelled and forecasting. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. As I've already stated that I agree with that, and the reasons why it was potentially overlooked. But all it's going to do, if it had been fully modelled in, would enhance the company's presentation as to why a toll increase would be required, because it would reduce the amount of revenue in the projections.
Okay. Do you agree that bulk purchases give the company a cash flow benefit?
A small amount of cash flow benefit, yes.
And another benefit, if it can be called that, is the forfeiting of unused SFTC passes after 2 years. What is the cancellation rate of SFTC passes?
I don't have that figure to hand, but I know it's a very, very small amount. Insignificant.
But I certainly have personal experience, so yes, it's not totally insignificant. So they do not have a number for the cancellation rate of SFTC passes.
I'm afraid I don't have that to hand, no.
Do you agree that the 2-year limit is a disincentive for people to buy large amounts of discounted tickets?
No.
Where in the 2021 order is there provision, this is the statutory instrument, is there provision for cancelling passes, which is in effect a reduction in discount?
I don't believe there is specifically one in there.
But do you agree that it is in effect a reduction in discount?
It effectively means that somebody is paying more for a certain number of tickets, but we don't think it's unreasonable. It's actually following accounting practice that we can't have what is in effect a creditor, an unknown amount of creditors on our balance sheet. That's a changing in accounting policy. Not the company's accounting policy. Policy is pushed upon us by FRS. So we have to accept that we have a number of paper book tickets in circulation, which is unquantifiable. But for someone purchasing either 10 or even a book of 50 tickets, if they purchase a book of 50 tickets over a period of 2 years, that means one ticket per fortnight. If they're only going to use it as irregularly as once a fortnight, one would assume that they would have probably been better to have purchased a book of 10. So we are where we are on that, I'm afraid.
Would you agree, though, that maybe 5 years would be a better expiry period, if there is to be an expiry period on the SFTC?
I appreciate that may be better for the very few customers who have experienced their SFTC passes expiring. But again, I don't know what provision it is under the FRS, but we have to account for creditors on our balance sheet, and we've been advised that 2 years is the appropriate term for such to be written off over.
Okay. So let's turn now to the road toll. You said in your proof of evidence statement, which is bundle 3, page 72, paragraph 8.3, Have you got that? So everyone got that? Paragraph 8.3. In effect, the ferry users are subsidising those people who use the road but not the ferry. This is plainly unfair. Now, do you agree that with the toll that you're seeking to charge, actually the reverse subsidy would be a consequence of that?
No, I don't.
So somebody who only uses the road is paying the same amount as somebody who is using the road and the ferry. Would you agree that that's not fair?
No, I wouldn't agree, because someone who uses just the road is more than likely going to be staying on the road for a number of hours. So effectively they're going to be stationary along the side of the road, so they're making use of that facility for a prolonged period of time. And someone who uses the ferry is more likely travelling from point A to point B, so they will use the ferry, traverse the road and exit the road. So it depends how you look at it. But what as I've said previously, that we've tried to achieve here is a balanced and fair spread of revenue generation amongst different classes of user for different purposes.
So if somebody uses the ferry and then parks, they get the use of the ferry for free, in effect.
Depends which way you look at it. The way we're actually looking at it is that they get free parking, because what we're aware of is that at our high season in the summer, on the Sandbanks side, people are queuing for the car park on Sandbanks and not coming to the ferry because they have to queue for the ferry. Conversely, this is when there happens to be no queue, but we should have a queue, because they're unable to park conveniently when they get to the other side. So what we're actually trying to do is to make a marginal effect to encourage people to use the ferry.
Does the company claim a right to charge for parking?
No, we're seeking to reintroduce the road toll.
So what is the fully burdened cost of operating the road?
It demonstrated in the projections. Off the top of my head, I'm not aware of the number. I think it's circa around in the tens of thousands. But as in evidence, one thing that hasn't been allowed for in the projections is the cost of resurfacing the road in the future. We don't know exactly how much that will be, other than say it will be hundreds of thousands, and we don't know when it's going to be, but we hope as far away as possible.
Well, maintenance, the average maintenance cost on the road is, let's say, £6,000 a year. That's what's in your forecast. And there will be around 700,000, 800,000 users of the road in a year. So if they all paid an equitable share of that £6,000, the road toll would amount to about 1 penny. And if the road were burdened with the additional costs of periodic resurfacing, the administrative costs of the company, etc., and that number was divided by 700,000 to 800,000, it's extremely unlikely that that number would be more than £1. Would you agree with that?
Following the methodology and the calculation you're using, I agree with that, but I don't know where you're getting the numbers from that you're using. We think it unlikely that there's 700,000 or 800,000 cars traversing the road in a year.
Well, there are 700,000 on the ferry alone.
Not quite.
Well, on that order, if you include cars, trucks, coaches, there are on the order of 700,000 users of that road in a year. And you are predicting that the road-only users are around 8,000.
Well, I think to charge a road toll of a penny per vehicle would be ridiculous. It wouldn't be worth charging. The cost of collection would outweigh it. As I've said, we've come up with a complete pricing structure for all classes and uses of the company's assets to attempt to generate sufficient revenue to meet the statutory test, which is to provide for all the running costs of the company and provide for a replacement ferry as and when required.
But the toll you've come up with seems to be wholly disproportionate with the aim of ferry users and road-only users having an equitable contribution to the cost of actually running the road. Would you agree with that?
I've already answered your question, and that is, if you look at it from the perspective you're looking at it, I wouldn't disagree with it, but we don't agree with the perspective you're looking at it from.
What would the cost per mile be on your toll road compared with other toll roads in the country?
In what respect? Sorry, I don't quite understand.
Well, you have a charge of £6. You're proposing a charge of £6.26, and the road is about 3 miles long, roughly. So your cost per mile, which is the way road tolls would normally be looked at, would be around £2 a mile. Would you agree with that?
Well, again, you could look at that the other way. If it's approximately 3 miles long, you traverse it one way, then traverse it the other way. So you travel 6 miles, and at £6, that's £1 a mile. So again, we're looking at this from very different perspectives.
We are
You
indeed.
could also argue the point, coming back to your point, if someone has paid for the ferry, or someone has paid to come over on the ferry, and they're paying for the road toll, and they've effectively got the ferry for free, how do you calculate that? There are several different ways of looking at this, and rather than giving your evidence, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I don't understand the point of your questioning here.
I'm simply questioning the comparison of your proposed toll with what would be normal on other toll roads. We are arriving at numbers on the order of £1 or £2 per mile, depending on whether you believe people go halfway, come back, go the full way and come back, whatever. But we're looking at numbers which are on that order, £1 to £2 per mile. And the M6 toll road, for example, which is...
So forgive me, I'm not sure this is an evidence, but it's mindful of the time and the circularity of the question.
Dr. Langley, do you want to pursue this question now, and then can we move on? You're talking about the M6 toll road.
Let's forget about the M6. Let's forget about the M6. Do you agree that the cost per mile is on the order of £1 to £2?
Looking at it from the perspective you are, I can't disagree with that.
So what proportion of the cars surveyed in your approximate use of 8,000 actually came from BH19?
We haven't surveyed the vehicles.
So by how much did you reduce your 65 car a day estimate of users because of the BH19 discount?
We haven't factored that in at all.
Just one final question on the road tolls. I think in paragraph 65 of B3 page 8, Have we got that? B3, page 80.
Sorry, is it 18 or 80?
880, B3, page 80. So this paragraph says that the ferry company has the right to enforce payment of a road toll under the Act quoted there, and the ferry company can make an application to the magistrate's court for a private prosecution. Any penalty paid for breach of this section will not be retained by the ferry company, but will be paid to the Exchequer. Is that correct?
I believe that to be the legal situation, yes.
Right. So if we then turn to B3, page 279. Is it B3, 279? Paragraph 23B it was. Okay, that's just about parking charges, which you claim you do not have. Sorry, I've obviously got the wrong reference here. Anyway, there is a reference in your evidence to say that the ANPR company would benefit from penalty charges, and I'm just questioning how is that consistent with what you said in the last reference that we looked at? Oh, actually, it's yeah, anyway, sorry. Well found. So how is the operating company going to benefit from penalty charges if the charges are going to the Exchequer?
My understanding is that it's a two-stage process. If upon non-payment of the road toll, the contracting company issues a penalty charge notice. There is an administration fee on top of that, potentially similar to what you might experience when you park illegally and get a penalty charge notice for not paying a parking toll. You get a potential to avoid escalation. They offered a discount to pay the fee in a short amount of time. If it then remains unadhered to, it will be escalated to the magistrate's court. So there's two stages to the process there.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Right, moving on. I'd just like to bring back this issue over pricing and sustainability. And
Dr. Langley, just before we move on, can you give me an indication of how much longer you're going to be on your questions?
I have a few. I am trying to get through them as quickly as I can, but
So I'm mindful that Dr. Lang has indicated he's about to move on to pricing and sustainability, and it appears that he's been talking about pricing and sustainability for a good part of this morning.
no, I haven't. This is a different issue.
Let's hear what those questions are. aware of the time, please?
I am. I'm sorry I have lots of questions, but this is a very complicated inquiry.
Yes.
Earlier there was a discussion about the increase in prices for pedestrians being not encouraging sustainable use of the ferry, and you pointed out that actually many foot passengers are going to arrive by vehicles. But does the same principle apply to bicycles?
Not to the same degree, no.
So one might expect that most of the bicycles arriving at the ferry will have been cycled there, they won't have been dropped off by cars. Would you agree with that?
Don't have any evidence to hand on that, but that wouldn't be an unreasonable assumption.
And do you agree that your historic data suggests that there's a fairly steady increase in bicycle use?
Yes, there has been over the last couple of decades.
But in your forecast, the bicycle traffic is actually lower. Would you agree with that too?
The latest iteration Mr. Thomas has put forward shows an average between 2018 and 2024.
7% below in 2024.
Yes.
So is it realistic to make that assumption that while bicycle traffic clearly seems to be increasing, you're actually forecasting that it's going to decline?
Potentially, but we've applied the same basis of calculation across all classes of vehicles, and with the greatest respect, the total revenue generated from cyclists is proportionally quite a small part of the company's overall revenue. I don't think the impact on the end result of the ferry replacement reserve in 8 or 9 years' time, I don't think the impact on it is going to be particularly significant.
But do you agree that the 75% increase in bicycle single fares doesn't promote their use?
Potentially, but as the inquiry is already aware, what we look to do is to have a fair basket of charges across all user types, and everybody essentially being treated in a similar, if not the same way, in increasing their tolls by inflation since the last time they were approved, and inflation since 2009 when the ABC cyclist and pedestrian group were increased. RPI inflation since that point has been 75%, over 75%.
Okay, let's turn on to returns on your cash deposits. Why are the forecast returns on cash as low as 2.2%?
Why are they?
Yeah.
Mr. Thomas didn't come up with that figure, so perhaps that question should have been directed at him, but I would suggest that 2.5% as an average over the course of time would be an unreasonable amount to expect.
But 10-year gilts are currently running at 4.6%. So why are you not investing in a higher return investment vehicle?
From my knowledge of gilts, 10-year gilts are the ones with the highest rate of interest. I think if you looked at gilts with lower time frames on them, they're not offering such great percentages.
But a 10-year gilt would be perfectly reasonable for building up the ferry replacement reserve cash, wouldn't it? So that is a 10-year period.
Potentially, but we still like to maintain the liquidity.
Why would you want to retain the liquidity on something which you know you're only going to use in 2034?
We might well have a necessity to use it before 2034.
But gilts are tradable, are they not?
Yes, but we choose to do what we do with the company's money, and we think on balance that what we do is best for the company and the safest solution, the most prudent solution.
I was going to say, it's surely not the safest solution if gilts are the alternative. So does that mean that the cost of the new ferry is rising faster than the funds that have been collected to pay for it? The rate of increase.
Sorry, could you explain the question?
Okay. You're making just 2.2, or you're forecasting just a 2.2% return on this larger sum of money, £4 million plus at the moment, and increasing to around £12 million by 2034.
In respect of what, sorry?
You're predicting 2.2% returns on the accumulating cash for the new ferry over the next 10 years. And at the same time, the new ferry is the cost of the new ferry is being inflated at something like 3%. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that's what Mr. Thomas has put in the financial projections.
So the witness, forgive me for interrupting you, Ian, the witness is being asked questions about the accountant's financial projections. The accountant given evidence just given an opportunity to ask questions. It's not fair on the witness that he's having to rely on his understanding according to the accountant of the accountant's projections.
Sorry, can you bear that in mind?
Yeah, sorry, when I did ask this question actually with Mr. Thomas, and he said it was a management decision how the money would be invested.
That was the question about the guilt which has been asked. I didn't object to that, but now you're asking about the inflation of the ferry, which is a different question.
Well, I'm trying to establish that the investment policy of the company is essentially wrong, because they're making lower returns on the cash that's being accumulated than the rate at which the ferry is increasing, and that seems like a very poor situation for...
You seem to be making assertions rather than asking questions. Can you make sure that your questions are more focused for the witness?
Okay, right. So, is there anything preventing a higher return being realised?
There's nothing preventing, no.
So, just moving on to return on investment briefly. Do you agree that the shareholder return on its investment over the next 10 years will be the future dividends over the life of the new ferry?
Not necessarily agree with that point over the life of the new ferry. If you're looking for the definition, yes, the return on the investment is effectively what the shareholders will receive as a dividend.
So it's not unreasonable that dividends should be suspended for a period whilst you build up this ability to buy the new ferry?
It's not unreasonable, no, and that's what, as my understanding, all of Mr. Thomas's projections show.
Can you confirm that the cost of the new ferry is £2.4 million higher in 2034 than what was assumed in the 2020 inquiry?
Without actual references, I can't, no, but that doesn't sound to be out of the ballpark. That's due to inflation since the previous inquiry.
No, it's due to, I'm talking about the change in the choice of ferry from diesel hydraulic to diesel electric.
Yes, there is a marginal increase due to taking the more sustainable and future-proofed model, and that's also financial prudence built into that as well. But part of the reason why that cost has gone up is not, as I say, I can't confirm the actual number because I don't have an evidential reference, but part of it will also be, and I would suggest it's roughly 50%, profitability will also be due to inflation since in the intervening period.
Yeah, there is certainly an inflation adjustment. I'm not referring to that. It's really the difference in the inflation adjusted prices, which is you can't confirm that it is £2.4 million. The difference between the cause, the consequence of the change in your decision, your management decision to go for a diesel electric ferry is an increase of £2.4 million in the requirement for cash in 2034.
Potentially, it could be, yes. The diesel electric is a more expensive craft, but it's future-proofing the craft itself due to likely technological changes during its 40-year life. And it's also the greener environmental option. It may be a possibility that at some point the diesel prime movers are no longer serviceable because the diesel engine industry is obviously changing. We have regular research and conversations about what methods of propulsion there are for merchant shipping vessels. So I don't think really that the company has a choice other than to future-proof its next vessel so it's able to become fully electrifiable as and when diesel becomes too expensive, or even potentially in the next 50 years the supply of diesel is no longer a possibility.
And finally, talking about financial arrangements, do you agree that Section 18.2 of the 1956 Act restricts the use of certain company funds for use as loans and guarantees?
So this is a legal question.
It does appear to be a legal question, yes.
So whom do I address that?
Do you want to address that in your submissions or not?
I'll be addressing the legislation.
Yes,
In my
so
submission.
that will be better, please.
I'll
Thank
pick that
you.
up particularly.
Okay, I think we're done.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mills,
Yes, I'll be brief. Just a couple of points. Yesterday in his question, Dr. Langley made the point that 2024, asserted that 2024 could not be relied upon because it was a wet summer. He suggested it was not reliable. Now, obviously, the inspector will form his own view as to whether or not wet summers are unusual in this country. But Mr. Thomas has given evidence about the position in the current year to date, which is obviously ongoing. Does that suggest, insofar as you're aware, that 2024 was an outlier, unusual in terms of passenger numbers?
No, it's not unusual at all. The lower traffic that we've seen in the first 9 months of the current financial year are approximately 1% lower than in the preceding year.
Right. If you turn please to bundle 1, page 19. Now, this is the average car calculation. To be clear, does your calculation show the income that the company has received in that financial year for the cars carried in that financial year?
It doesn't show the actual amount, it shows the average amount.
Yes, sorry, that's the two figures it uses and it uses an average.
Yeah.
And therefore, does it reflect, and essentially, if you like, give credit for when advance purchases are bought, so that will drive up the average in that year?
No, it doesn't take account, this is what I tried to explain to Mr. Land, it doesn't take account of when the tickets were actually purchased. So
well, it does, doesn't it, because it's income sensitive, so the income will go up in that year.
Yes.
And therefore credit will be given, if you like, for the fact that there's advanced purchases in that year.
Yeah,
Then similarly, it will reflect the fact that in the following year, people will be travelling still having paid the previous year. So
and potentially the previous year in front of that as well.
So by given the 2-year validity period, given and given the fact that you have been able to calculate more than a single year, this captures, doesn't it, the pattern of people paying and therefore credit being given for those advanced purchases, and then the following year they're still travelling on those advanced purchases.
Yes, it does to the vast degree. The only thing it doesn't factor in is the marginal effect of historic paper tickets that could potentially still be used, but it's essentially all right, yes.
So, for example, in 2022, it would seem likely that £4.49 average paid is capturing people buying advanced purchases, and then we see the following year it's significantly lower. Might that reflect the fact that people having bought the advanced purchases are still using them?
That indicates that there might have been a small degree of hoarding, for want of a better term, in the financial year 2022. People purchasing ahead of any price increase.
And is that something which the 2-year validity period is essentially subject to? That a person can buy in 2022 at 2022 prices and still be travelling once the prices have gone up in 2023, effectively at 2022 prices.
Correct, and again the following year in 2024. And hence why the numbers are skewed slightly differently from the perspective Mr. Langley was looking at it from.
Now, Dr. Langley suggested an alternative calculation, that's at 4179. An alternative way, if you turn that up, please, you've got that in front of you,
yes.
4179. And so what he wanted to know primarily is whether the discount was comparable or not. And you can see that he's calculated that, and he's obviously taken you through that at some length. But if we see below table 1, the narrative that's written below table 1, beginning the APCC, forgive me, you see that?
Yes.
The APPC is therefore 482, or a discount of 38p relative to the single ticket fare, yes?
Yes.
Now he's looking at books of 50 tickets, say, bought in 2024. But given the 2-year validity, is it possible to say that the discount is truly 38p? Or is it not the case?
No, that's not true to say that.
Why so?
Because people could still be using tickets in that year that were bought previously at a previous lower, one would assume, lower rate, and it's potential that they could be purchasing tickets in that year that again they won't use in that year. They might use 2 years moving forward.
But the latter's the point, isn't it, that in 2024 people are buying tickets, they're still using them in 2025, and so the discount will be significantly greater than that 38 that Dr. Langley reckons.
That's correct.
And so when he says the discount is comparable to what was anticipated, we can't know that, can we?
We can't know that, no. All we can do is rely on what we know, and that is that we're selling a greater proportion of discounted tickets and discounted travel.
Now, Dr. Langley proposed a 5-year limit on a ticket's validity. Would that exaggerate even further that effect that we've just discussed?
Yes, it would do.
So we'd have people in 2030 travelling in 2025 prices, for example.
Correct.
And what would that do for the sustainability, the viability of the ferry company?
It would exacerbate the problem that we're already facing.
If I have the financial wherewithal, it would make great deal of sense for me to buy a very large number of multiple tickets.
Yes, as people have historically done. I think I alluded to it yesterday. There was one person, when we did the double discount, came and bought £10,000 worth of tickets, which we know he's still using to this day, 6 years later.
Now, there was arguments about reliability of projections in terms of behavioural change in relation to advanced purchases. The company had said that there was a behavioural change that's ongoing, and Dr. Landfield said otherwise. But if there was a behavioural change, given that 2024 was used in part as a base year, would you expect that behavioural change to be captured rather than neglected in projection?
It's half captured because it's in the projections we've used an average of 2018 and 2024, so it's partially captured.
And if there were any change attributable to the reduction in discounts, would the combination of 2024 and 2018 go some way to reflecting that?
We'll go some way for sure, yeah.
Now, by reference to bundle 3, on page 278, I should say, pronunciation, paragraph 21.
Dr. Langley asked you questions at some length about...
Sorry, I'm in the wrong bundles.
Bundle 3, page 278.
Yeah.
And paragraph 21 and onwards. Dr. Langley asked you a number of questions which were essentially saying that, essentially seeking to support the argument that the tolls were disproportionate to the costs of the motor road, albeit some of those motor road costs are unknown. It is the only purpose or objective of reintroducing the road toll to recoup the costs in relation to the motor road itself?
No, as I've already explained, they are to bolster the company's finances to assist in the end ultimate goal of the company, which is to bring the ferry replacement reserve back up to the level it needs to be by the early 2030s.
In your understanding, from when the company was set up by Parliament through to today, are the road and the ferry to be treated as separate, distinct, siloed, if you like, things? Are they to be treated as a unit that works together?
As far as I understand, it's to be treated as a single business, a single unit, multiple assets, all providing to the same end result.
You ask questions about why doesn't the company invest in 10-year gilts. Will 10-year gilts, unless traded, carry with it, 10-year gilts invested in today, carry with it the money being locked away for 10 years essentially, unless traded? If money was invested in 10-year gilts today, so if the company through the FRR invested fully into 10-year gilts, will it have access to that, unless it chose to trade them, will it have access to that money?
Not immediate access, no, and not without trading charges either.
Well, that's it. So not immediate access, you said. And then if it did want to access that money, would there be transactions or trading charges?
Yes, there would be, I would imagine, quite substantial for the small amounts being talked about.
And would that be likely to eat away any nominal return?
I would suggest that it would probably eat a big proportion of any extra return that might be gathered over what we do currently, which is to leave the money on short-term deposits.
No further questions, thank you.
Thank you. I've just a couple of questions, please. So, bundle 3, page 278 and paragraph 22.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, looking at two different versions and different references. Just so this is your rebuttal proof of evidence. Paragraph 22. We've just covered with Mr. Reynolds about the income from the road toll. Your paragraph says projected income from the road toll will provide an additional income source without much in the way of increased expenditure. It's been suggested that the projected level of income expected is not significant in the overall accounts. Just want to be clear, in response there, you're saying that this is seen as a full package with the ferry charges themselves. It's treated as one unit, I think is the answer you gave. So it's to bolster the finances for the benefit of the FRR.
Yes, that's where all the funds generated from the road toll will essentially end up.
So it is more than just looking at the road in isolation and then maintenance costs resurfacing in the future.
Oh, very much so, yes.
Further benefit building.
Yes.
So what proportion of overall income would that generate in terms of the bigger picture?
What percentage?
Yes.
Well, I think it's projected to be approximately 51,000 according to the projections in the first year. So if one were to take an average turnover of, let's say, 2.5 million a year, that equates, I believe, to 2% per annum extra turnover. But as that point made, that paragraph 22 you referred to there, that is essentially clear profit because that is net. That's the pure revenue that the company will receive. So that's it. You can look at it as a proportion of turnover, approximately 2%, but it's pure profit. So it will be a much bigger portion of profit before tax in any given year.
Okay. Thank you. Let's then turn to the explanatory memorandum, which is bundle 1, page 24, and paragraph 16.5.
Which section says that?
16.5.
Yes.
Just clarification. So you say the ferry makes several more crossing dairy runs required under legislation.
Yes.
What is the requirement that you have?
Ooh, off the top of my head, essentially it is during the winter. Mr. Reynolds might be able to supply in the winter we only have to run, I believe, until 1 hour after sunset, which is about it depends when sunset is, or at night, if I remember correctly, or 9 o'clock, whichever the later. But all through the winter, we still run the service through till 11 o'clock at night. We also, the extra services, I think, is also covered in the above paragraph 16.4. We run blue light services throughout the night. We remain on call for that, and also during the busy peak times in the summer, when we have a queue in one direction but light traffic in the other, we're able to move into what we call shuttle mode, which is where we fall off timetable and we move backwards and forwards as quickly as we can to clear the queue on one side. So that often means that we do extra return trips.
Okay, that's useful. This is clearly background information, but I wonder if it could be, a note could be put in which summarises what your timetable is during different periods and relates that to the legislative position.
I don't know if you want to have a legislative reference now, just find it.
Oh, right, okay.
I mean, I will be in my closing.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, so it's in Bundle 2, and it's the 1923 Act. Bundle 2, page 33, and it is, I believe, 57, subsection 10. Subsection 57, subsection 10. The company shall provide from 7 o'clock in the forenoon, when summertime is in force, and from 8 o'clock in the forenoon at all other times of this year, until 1 hour after sunset on every day, and at stated times the minimum hourly service of vessels from each shore. So from 7 o'clock in the forenoon, when summertime is in force, and from 8 o'clock in the forenoon until 1 hour after sunset every day is what the 1923.
Okay, that's good.
And just to add to that, I think in or around that paragraph, it also states that we have to run 2 return services now, and we actually run 3 return services now, all day, every day. But to answer your question, what you would like us to do is provide a note of the service we actually offer.
Yes, please. That'd be helpful.
Against the legislative requirements.
Thank you. And then 2 further questions. Partly arising from what was presented by witnesses last night, there was some discussion about the concession you made in terms of the postcode to BH18.
BH19.
And what I wanted to understand, well, first of all, can the plan be shown on that postcode area?
Would you like it BH19 and BH20 on it as well?
That would be helpful, because that's what I was going on to. Those witnesses said that there were locations closer to the ferry than others in BH19, so I'd quite like to understand that. Why you had just taken the BH19 area and not looked at proximity to the ferry.
Yeah, the BH20 postcode stretches many miles further away from the ferry operation than BH19 does. Appreciating that there are some areas of BH20 which are actually closer to the ferry than some areas of BH19. But we had to draw the line somewhere. We came up with a concession that seemed to relate to the feedback we were getting, that the majority of people who wanted the concession were in BH19. We weren't getting any feedback that there were actually people in BH20. But in that close area of the part of BH20 that is closer to the ferry operation, immediately adjacent to the BH19, BH19 was chosen because in that area it's a very low population until you get to, in fact it's very rural, there's hardly anything there until you get to Corfe Castle, but then Corfe Castle is such a distance away from the ferry, as far away if not further than Swadditch. That's why we chose the BH19 area, because that again that captured the majority of where the negative feedback was coming from. We had to choose somewhere to draw a line, and that just felt like a logical way of offering a concession.
Could you have subdivided BH20 so that the postcodes narrow down to a couple of streets, but I'm not suggesting that. Other parts of BH20 to cover those areas closer to the ferry, between North Castle.
I'm sure that information is available, and that's something we could look at if the inspector would like.
I think that would be helpful just to understand on the basis of those comments last night. Mr. Reynolds, can you continue that? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And then the final question, which I think probably comes back to a legal answer for us to do in the first place. Mr. Slow last night was referring to the Human Rights Act in relation to the World Heritage Sites and the implications there. Is that something you could answer about?
I'm afraid not.
I'll then ask
Mr. Keane, are you able to give evidence, insofar as you're aware, as to the extent of the World Heritage Site?
I can tell you a little bit about the World Heritage Site.
The extent to which...
Oh, the extent, yeah, it doesn't include the ferry land or the ferry operation.
That's helpful, but I think the point that was being made was its access to reach that land via the toll road. So I presume this is more of a legal issue, so we'll need to address
it's
it.
a matter of interest that we address.
Yes, okay.
For the implication.
Thank you. So those are all the questions I had, so thank you very much, Mr. Keane.
Sorry, there may be a factual, the notice has been passed, sorry, in relation to that, there may be a factual piece of evidence. Just one moment. Sorry, I'm aiming to get something into evidence to make this point good based on the talk, but I'll see if I can. It's been suggested to me that the protected area, for want of a better word, is some distance from the toll road, and therefore not accessed by the toll road. The toll road is not the primary means. The ferry road is not the primary means of access to that protected area. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
What is the means of access to that road? Protected area?
To the protected areas?
Yes.
Do you know which part you're actually talking about? Because it's a very large area.
Talking about the World Heritage Site, the Jurassic Coast.
Yeah, the Jurassic Coast can be accessed by a number of points other than Ferry Road. It can be accessed from, in our part of it, can be accessed from National Trust car parks, but the Jurassic Coast runs a long way. And it's not just accessed by us, by the ferry company property.
Okay. I'll address you on the legal aspect of that.
Thank you.
I'm grateful for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keane. So, Mr. Keane, do you want to call your first witness?
Might we request a break now?
Yes.
As appropriate, so I think it would be appreciated by the witnesses.
Okay, that's fine. So it's just a minute to 5 to 11. Do you want to break that call, please?
Yes.
Okay, we'll